So Zoleka, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Thank you, Nick, for having me. What an honor to be part of your leadership series. As you rightfully say, I'm Zoleka Lisa. Grew up in Johannesburg, but had the pleasure of being raised by my grandmother in the Eastern Cape. So I spent a lot of my early childhood with my grandmother in the Eastern Cape. She was a nurse at Mthatha General, so I did my early schooling there. And then I've just advanced. I came back to Johannesburg to complete my schooling, but come from a very loving home, a home where education was very much revered. So I'm one of those Black females who have a grandmother who was incredibly strict. So education, excellence, and being a strong woman is a lot of how my upbringing was shaped, and it's what it involved.
And tell us, Zoleka, what was your dream career when you grew up?
To be honest, Nick, I don't know if I had a dream career per se. I think as a person and as an individual, I was incredibly curious. I loved to ask why, to think deeply, to reflect, and that's who I am today and the person that I've always been. So because of that, I just was quite interested in the world. So whatever I did was around curiosity. I ended up in the sciences. Funny enough, I think it would make sense. Trying to understand how the world works. I then went on to study developmental economics on top of that. And it was my I think my passion to understand the things that shape and influence the world. So a dream career, not per se, but curiosity has always been something that is been the core of who I am.
Right. And can you tell us who inspired you in your early days?
I've been able to stand on the shoulders of giants and have been able to see further because of that. And I would humbly say my parents have played an incredibly big role in shaping the person I am and just the outlook that I have, how I show up, having empathy, being resilient. My home environment, I think, played a very, very big role. I'm surrounded by very strong Xhosa women in my family. I've spoken about my grandmother. So I think my family played an incredible role in shaping me to be the person that I am today.
And Zoleka, looking back over your career, would you say there was a turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
I think it's an interesting question. If I reflect on my career journey, I would say there've been special
Yeah.
milestone. I wouldn't say there's been one specific event. I always look at my career in 5 year stints. It's small enough to reflect on what have I achieved. From starting very early as a university graduate going into management consulting at Accenture. That was a special milestone. Changing careers almost 10 years ago to leave management consulting and join the world of breweries. That was a special milestone. To a couple of years back, having the opportunity of being promoted to become an executive and a vice president in the world's biggest brewing organization. I think there've been lots of milestones, and at each milestone, there's been three things that have stood out for me. I've maintained the curiosity. I've always believed in lifelong learning. My outlook on team has continued to evolve from leading self to leading team to leading organizations to now being part of almost national and continental discussions. And I think as my life changed in those seasons, I've also had a deeper understanding of the legacy I want to leave behind. Becoming a mom at some point has also influenced quite a bit how those special milestones sort of looked and played out, if that makes sense.
And Zoleka, can you tell us what is driving you today?
What inspires and drives me today is I'm a super working mom. I love being a working mom. I'm very much inspired by the continent. I think Africa has so much potential. Um, there's a lot we can and still have to achieve. I'm inspired by the many women and young people who just don't give up against all odds. And Nick, both you and I know that living in our continent, there's so much challenges that we faced, and there's just a lot of people who just refuse to give up. So that tenacity, that resilience, I think really inspires me to show up as a leader, to show up as a mother, to show up as an African, and do my bit in terms of shaping the continent's development.
Now, Zoleka, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the, what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Sure. The future of leadership, I think it's one where leaders have to adapt to being able to exist in permacrisis, a constant state of handling crisis after crisis. It's a world where leaders have to be incredibly agile. You know, you're going to have to be versatile, adaptive, and I think it's a future where we really have to lean into people and see people as individuals and understand exactly where our teams are in order to keep them inspired enough to stick it out. I think the world is incredibly volatile right now. There's so much going on. So I really see leaders having to be quite agile and working through the unexpected.
And tell us, Zoleka, looking back over your own leadership career, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders and empowering future leaders?
I think what I've learned in my own journey, Nick, is I've always stayed true to who Zoleka is. So, Zoleka's curiosity, Zoleka's love for family, Zoleka showing up for herself is something that I repeat and I continue to share with my team. And for future leaders, what I continue to share with them is to make themselves proud. You know, sometimes you can get very lost in a huge organization and try to please many people. I think it's so important to be focused, to have a very clear career plan, know who your supporters, your sponsors are, lean into that ecosystem and that support structure, and really show up for yourself. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if there's someone you have to make proud in your leadership journey, it's also yourself. So that's been a big piece of advice that I share with my team and my mentees is really showing up for oneself.
Now, Zoleka, as you mentioned, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the challenges they should expect to encounter in their career?
Challenges in the career space will be multiple. I think as you grow in your career, leading bigger teams, leading organizations, the complexity, balancing what happens in the internal organization with the external context is becoming more and more challenging. Technology is changing how we view a lot of things. So being open-minded. And I think, look, geopolitically, there's also many things that are playing out. I think future leaders need to have this hunger for learning. You need to keep yourself upskilled, updated, relevant enough to be able to know how to filter and balance all the things that'll come your way. More so that you're going to have to be learning things quite quickly and keep on your toes. So I think it's this whole curiosity. I'm a huge fan of just reading, informing yourself, being in circles where you consistently are being challenged to learn new things, and that strengthens your toolkit as a person and as a leader. So as things come your way, be it economic, be it in the organization, you've really prepared your brain, your thinking, and your toolkit in terms of how to manage those challenges.
And Zoleka, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
Sure, Nick. I think a bit of old and a little bit of new. In leadership, it's you don't always have to do a new self. I think the first skill is managing self and knowing who you are as a person and as a leader. It keeps you grounded, it keeps you authentic. Secondly, it would be something around grit. I think this notion of being able to be passionate enough and have the perseverance to see long-term goals through, more so in a volatile and unpredictable world, and also when you're having to deal with a perma-crisis condition. I would focus as well on technology. I would say technology shouldn't be feared, it should be embraced and can be used as an enabler. And I think I come from a background where I do a lot of social impact work. I think this balance of understanding how business operates along with society, communities, and the environments, and that shared values at the core of business growth would be something I'd continue to focus on. But I'd really start with the individual and make sure that they really are working on themselves and who they are.
Now, Zoleka, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
I I think one of the best jobs that I have is seeing my team and my mentees win. Across the companies that I've worked across the years. And I've had lots of mentees, Nick, that I've seen just be successful. I think one of the success stories I'll share is one lady who came into the organization who really didn't who 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 didn't own her leadership voice. And must have been probably now a year or so that she's exited the organization to pursue a new opportunity. But if I reflect on her journey and the growth in finding a leadership voice, and again, this notion of showing up for herself, showing up for opportunities, creating a brand that is described by excellence and hard work, so much so that she was headhunted by another top employer to lead a new opportunity. That for me is a huge success because it starts with someone just showing up for themselves, winning and making themselves and end of the day making their family and the organization proud. And I really love to see people win. I'm a huge fan of women empowerment in the workplace. So there are lots of these stories where people start off not quite sure and confident, and then go on to be top business leaders in South Africa. And it's just always heartwarming to see.
Right. And Zoleka, looking back over your leadership journey and maybe your learning journey, are there any role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
I think as leaders, it's important to draw inspiration from people who you share values with. And that's a very personal choice. I've said my family have always been anchors for myself. I'm inspired by other change makers on the continent who are as passionate about Africa's development, passionate about women and youth and social impact. And there's so many. And it doesn't always have to be a celebrity, a politician, or big CEO. There are people that I come across through our work with our SAB Foundation in the most rural parts of the country, Nick, who are resilient, who are tenacious, who are unrelenting in the pursuit of just realizing the potential. So I think it's find people whose values you connect with, whom you feel that you can draw inspiration from, and they don't have to be far. They could just be in your community, and they could be as close as your family.
Absolutely. Now, Zoleka, where can our listeners follow you and how can they connect with you?
I am very active on LinkedIn. I believe in leveraging the the digital world that's out there from a work perspective. So you are welcome to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm very active, and I'm one of those people. Funny enough, I respond to all the notes that I get. It's a way of staying in touch with the talent that's out there and the people who are committed to personally and professionally developing themselves. So when they reach out, I've responded to many a DM in my career.
Right. And now, Zoleka, last but not least, since you mentioned legacy, um, what is it that you would like to be remembered for, if I may ask?
Sure. Being a super mom is one, and being a super change agent for the continent. Really being a leadership voice and champion that is adding to the continent's development, and more so for women and youth. I really want to see our country and our continent win, and to do my part in being part of that story, however hard it may be.
Well, Zoleka, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and for inspiring so many future leaders.
Thank you, Nick, for the platform, and I think it's an honor to have platforms like this that create a platform for us to engage and to share and to just continue to build leadership talent on the continent.
Thank you.